Hello, everybody. It's Michelle Jackson. I am here with a Pen Posse interview. I know you're like, man, you've been interviewing everybody every week. And I'm like, yeah, we're back at doing our thing, which is to get as many authors on the screen so we can help them build a fan base. It is part of the Black Writers Workspace, a community that I created back in 2020. And our goal is to make sure that our independent authors, our authors of color specifically, have an opportunity to build a fan base. If you don't know this, I'm going to tell you a little secret. It's hard to push a book when you don't have a big marketing budget behind you. And so what we try to do is to come together as a community and showcase some of the amazing works that are out there. And our independent authors are writing up a storm, and they are telling the stories of this time, which is so important, and controlling the narrative. And so today we have Anav, and he has written a social issues book about poverty that I think is going to be so dynamic for all of us to hear about. And that book talks about the war on poverty here in the United States. Anav is out of the Illinois area, and he has those Southern roots. He's lived down South for many years. And I'm just happy to have him here and to talk about his book. And I'm going to give you this title. I don't have to read it because it's a long title, but I love it. It's called The Invisible America: Why the Richest Country in the World is Hiding Its Most Embarrassing Failure of All Time, the War to End Poverty. And so today we're going to talk about just that, the racial wealth gap, poverty as a whole, and how it has impacted our country. So let's invite him. Let's get him on the screen. Hello.
Hello, Michelle. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being with us. We are excited to have you here. For everyone out there, please go, if you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're on Facebook, be sure to continue to follow us. We have a social issues writer here, and that's important to me. I'm out there getting my PhD from Southern University in public policy. I spent years working for the governor of Maryland and looking at issues like access to capital and wealth, and how it has impacted many of our communities, including the marginalized community. So it's really great to have you here to talk about something so important as the war to end poverty. So let's stop first and get to know you. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about yourself and tell us about your work.
Okay, Michelle. I'm a native of the Southside of Chicago. I was born and raised here. At the age of 17, I left to join the Army. Now, I'll be honest to say I did not join to defend my country. I joined to escape poverty. That was my ultimate goal. Um, and I stayed in the Army from 1985 to 2009. I held various positions in the military, from patient administration to unit armor to career counseling. But when I retired from the Army, I moved to the South. And now I'm in Jackson, Mississippi, where I was there from um, April 2009, working for the Department of Veteran Affairs, to November of 2025, where I had to retire due to medical conditions. As far as writing, I loved it. I've always loved writing since I was, I believe, 12 years old. And regardless of the topic, I just felt like I can write anything. If I watched a television movie, I can write about that. If I listen to someone speak, if they sparked a conversation, I can write about that. But once I gave my life to the Lord, I started to focus on writing about more issues so that people can have a way out. So what inspired me to write this book, it was a divine intervention, because I promised myself I would never write about politics. And one night, while I was in my apartment, my daughters was in the other room listening to the presidential candidate and debate, and I was like, they don't do that. So I got up and walked in the room and asked them, why are you watching this? And they said, because it's a school project. So I walked back out. I went to sleep, and I woke up in the middle of the night with this thought: write about poverty. And that's where it all began, because as I started doing the research, it became very depressing. I mean, it was just terrible. Um, and the overall factor is that Bible tells us when Jesus said, Luke, physicians, heal thyself. None of our politicians are trying to do anything to fix poverty in the United States. But every time you turn the TV on, they're giving billions of dollars to other countries. And nobody's tackling poverty in the United States. Not even if you vote for me, I'll do this. They're not even addressing the issue.
I think the war on poverty, it feels like people have given up on that, the war on poverty. It's like we can't win. We don't know how to win, and how do we get the political support behind it in order to win this war on poverty? And because we can't win, because everything, a lot of things in this country is about actually winning and not about doing the right thing. It has just gone nowhere. I am someone who grew up never in said that I never felt poor until I got to college, but I grew up in public housing. And, I never saw myself as someone who came from a poor, a community that would be considered poor because it was so rich in love and, in community. But when I got to college and professors began to look at or talk about where the wealth level that a family could be at, what is considered poor. And that's when it dawned on me that we would have been considered below the poverty line. And it did change how I saw myself and how I saw the things around me. So I love that you said that you went into the military because you were escaping poverty. A lot of the things that we do, poverty seems to nudge us in a direction because that's how my life was. It was like the lack that I had, I was running from that lack. And so I ran into directions I thought would end that. I went to college. I, just kept getting degree after degree after degree. But I realized also that there was a poverty mindset that I struggled with as well because I was constantly pushing and I was constantly in survival mode. So that's what's so great about you writing this book is that you're tackling something that you are absolutely right. Our politicians aren't talking about the war on poverty the way they did back in the 80s and the 70s. It's almost like it's been resolved, and it hadn't. So talk to us about the three things within your book that you really wanted your readers to understand.
Okay, here's my three things. The first one is the understanding of the poverty in America. At present, at the time I wrote this book in 2025, it was 37.9 million people living in poverty in the United States. But when the government shut down in November 2025, they announced that the number of people on SNAP benefits was 40.1 million. That means that number climbed to almost 3 million in less than 1 year. And so, this is information coming from the Census Bureau. So here's my three takeaways. The first is that every voter needs to use their right. They need to discontinue being in a state of hopelessness and send a message that change is not impossible. Um, our legacy of living in poverty discourages us from seeking improvement. And we used to say, or you hear people saying poverty, well, I'm doing this for my child so that they have a better future. Well, how about do it for yourself so you can have a better future? The second is it is essential that poverty becomes the primary topic of discussion, not just on social media, but on news, in congressional hearings. It must happen. Professional athletes, and this is something that they should not take lightly. Professional athletes and entertainers. If poverty continues to rise, people are not going to come see you perform. They're not going to go to the movie theater to watch your movies. Because why? Because they have to make a decision on whether or not they have the money to spend on entertainment versus daily living. So that's something for them to think about. We need their support. And my third one is the President of the United States needs to address this issue. He needs to be on national TV. If he can talk about everything else, he needs to talk about the war on poverty. We have too many politicians that are Democrats, Republican, independent party members. Nobody's saying a word. This is a battle that everybody must take a part in, because poverty doesn't just stop on the south side of any major city. I can use Chicago and Jackson, Mississippi as an example. South side of Chicago, you have buildings that are abandoned, boarded up, homes that need to be demolished, streets that are torn apart. No one has done anything for years. And then you go to the north side, brand new buildings, brand new restaurants, brand new facilities, living accommodations are beautiful. Streets are not just covered with asphalt, they're torn down and rebuilt. And it's terrible because it sends a message to people living in poverty: you can't escape. And that's not true. And that is why, one, we need to vote. Two, our politicians must remember the oath that they've taken. And we're the ones who have to remind them, and we only can do it one way and one way only: vote them out of office. They've been there long enough. Vote them out of office.
Poverty is a real issue, something that we definitely need to spend more time focused on as a country. As a community, we need to spend more time focused on it as well. When I think about poverty, I have some data here that's just remarkable to me. I wanted to kind of go through a little bit of it. It says that the number of people living in poverty in the United States, this is as of 2024, is 35.9 million in the United States. That's roughly 10.6% of the population. So 1 in 10 people live in poverty in the United States. 1 in 10. Now, I want to say this about poverty. People think poverty is someone who may be unhoused or homeless. We think poverty is representative of where a person lives, per se. You may live in the hood, or you may live in the projects, or that's only part. No, people can be living under the poverty line and live in a house. They can have assets or appear to have assets and still be living in poverty. And so that's important. 1 in 10 people. And if you think about the number of people around you, for those out there, take a look. Everybody that you may think isn't living in poverty, that's not the fact all the time. So that's important to know. Being in poverty here in the United States means that a household income is below the threshold set by the U.S. government, which is under $31,000 for a family of 4. So you are living beneath the poverty line if you are making $31,000 or less for a household of 4 people. That represents a lot of people, a lot of people. And I just wanted to kind of put that out there because it's important to understand when we talk about poverty, who and what that is. And I think there are just so many misconceptions about it. Now, you said 3 things. You said we must vote. We need to make poverty a main topic of discussion, which is true, and that our president needs to address it. Do you talk about in your book, or can you share with us without, spoiling anything, how would you address these things? I know those are some of the tactics, but what's the big piece that you think needs to be in place in order to really address poverty in this country?
As I said before, social media has become a great outlet. Everyone needs to get involved. The best way you can get involved with fighting the war on poverty is, if you are living in those communities, take a picture, send it to your congressman, send it to your senator, send it to your alderman, your mayor, your governor, and say, why is my neighborhoods like this? Get the entire country to stand behind the war on poverty, because now one politician can explain that. They can lie on TV and say, we're fighting the war on poverty, we did an increase to social welfare, but wait until they see the pictures. You've been in the office for how many years, and this neighborhood still looks the same? I grew up on the Southside Chicago. I left for 33 years and come back, and it's still the same. But the north side isn't. So somebody's doing something for other people, but not people in poverty. And that's not only is it carelessness and a sign that you just don't care about people, it's dangerous because as the numbers of poverty continue to grow, people go into survival mode.
Mhm.
And if you think just the neighborhoods and the poor, impoverished communities are going to be affected, crime is going to rise. Um, Wait until they break out of those neighborhoods and come into your backyard because poverty has no color. We have the highest number in poverty. We're right now at 20.2%, 9% whites, Hispanics 16%, Asian Native Americans and Island Pacificans 9.8, American Indians and Alaska Natives 23.2. They're above us, but multiple races is 3.12. Poverty is not just confined to one color. But if we're going to fight this battle, we need everybody involved. And that's the best way you can do it. Second, is start, you let these politicians walk in your churches and try to get you to vote for them. Stand up and ask them what they're doing for poverty.
Mhm.
You have press newspapers in your community. Ask them to publish pictures about poverty. Talk about poverty. Stop being silent. That is the overall message. Stop being silent.
Stop being silent. I think there has to be a level of intentionality in dealing with this. Absolutely. We have to talk about it. We have to let people know. I mean, it feels like over the last decade or so, we lean so heavily towards focusing on the middle class.
Yes.
If we can if we make sure the class continues to build wealth, then the country will be in a better place. But then it leaves us silent about those who aren't in the middle class or even those who are in the working class, which is probably the most of us are in the working class versus the middle class. And so, and then if we're not talking about working class people, we are not dealing with those who are poor. We have now, as a country, began to put homeless or unhoused people in jail. I know that has happened here in New Orleans, for living on the street, but no one wants to dig in and find out why are they living on the street. We also have a housing market that is out. I mean, the cost of a house outpaces the workforce income levels in a city. You've got a minimum income level for your high growth jobs that may be around $15 an hour, but your homes are ranging $250,000, $300,000. That doesn't balance. You can't even afford to live. Um, Apartments are expensive. My son just got his own apartment 2 weeks ago. I could not believe how expensive it was just to move into an apartment. So when we talk about poverty, there are so many political issues around it, social issues around it, financial issues around it, and I just feel like a lot of the powers that be that can make a difference have just given up and said we can't not attack all those different pieces in order to make this something doable. But I love that you have decided you're going to speak out, and we need more people doing just that. I have a quote here, and I have a question for you. Um, Something I read that I just absolutely love was a quote by um, I'm going to just give you a little bit of it by Coretta Scott King that says, "Poverty is violence." Okay. Poverty is violence. Love that. Starving a child is violence. Suppressing a culture is violence. Neglecting school children is violence. Discrimination against a working person is violence. Ghetto housing is violence. When you think about poverty being described as violence, what does that say to you? And what does the future look like in America if we don't deal with the war on poverty?
Okay, the first thing I notice is that when we say poverty is violence, because it is a systematic attack, and not just an individual, but a culture or uh, a nationality. I believe it's the first chapter of the book where I wrote "Poverty is Manufactured in America," and it talks about how there's a elite, a middle, a upper class, and then the lower class. Poverty, they don't refer to as the lower class. They just say lower class. They just say it. But here's the issue. Why does it exist? It exists so that the middle class can afford their lifestyle and the upper class can afford their lifestyle. Um, so it's an attack because you don't see an end to it. There's a reason why there's no end to it. If we bring people out of poverty, who's going to do the work? Who's going to work for the $10 an hour so that I can keep $750,000 in my pocket? That's the first attack. It's attack of your character, your personality. It lacks self-respect for you because it shows that there's a upper echelon of people living in the United States that just don't care about you. And the fact that they are politicians is what makes it worse because they know what's going on. They won't even walk through the poverty-stricken neighborhoods to campaign. They know what they're doing. They stay away from those neighborhoods. They go into restaurants in the neighborhoods. They don't walk through the poverty neighborhoods.
Well, there's an assumption that poor people don't vote. And if my self interest lead me as a politician to believe that I need to only um, pour in or invest into people in areas and opportunities that are going to keep me in power, then I'm not going to concern myself with people who don't vote. But that's not, we have to dig into why they don't vote as well. I mean, voting, which I'm a big advocate for, I don't want to confuse anybody on that. I think everyone needs to get out and vote in every election. But there are those out there who feel that it is the system that created the poverty that they are now stuck in. And it becomes a cycle. It becomes almost a generational curse of what we do when for those of us who grew up in poverty. Many of us have watched people in our family stay in that very state of poverty their whole lives. So it does become a generational curse. So it's almost like, how do I dig myself out of it? And what is voting going to do? Well, voting is going to hopefully eliminate some of these politicians who don't want to walk through the impoverished areas. It will also shine a light on the fact that the people have spoken and we need to speak up so that we can change our communities. I think, I don't know when this took root, but when the conversation leaned into people who are poor are takers, that became very frustrating for me as someone who grew up in public housing and watched my mother work every day, 2 jobs, and pay to stay there. She wasn't staying there free. I grew up in a community of people who were good people, who were working class people. They weren't takers. They were working hard to try to get their families to a better place. But just because we weren't making over that, threshold to be considered working a middle class, we were now takers. And so that is something I'm very passionate about as well. And it's funny, I've had this conversation with my husband a million times. Why don't we talk about poverty? I almost feel like it has become a word that people want to eliminate. Like they don't want you to say homeless anymore. They don't want you to say unhoused. We are now using the vernacular to eliminate the sincerity or seriousness of an issue. There are people who are living in extreme poverty, and the poverty breeds violence. It breeds criminality. It breeds hopelessness. It breeds death. It breeds so many things that if we don't address as a community, we're going to have a future that's not going to move forward. So I love that you're doing this. And talk to me about like the process of writing this book. What did you learn about yourself in this process?
One of the things I learned about myself was I may have escaped from poverty, but as long as you have one family member that can say, hey, can you help me? You haven't escaped.
Mm-hmm.
There was a period in my life where I was ashamed to come home because I didn't want to see the neighborhood that my family was still in. And I was in a nice, cush neighborhood environment, courtesy of the military. And I didn't want to be reminded where I came from. And one day my sister told me when I was back home visiting, she said, you better stop acting like you don't know what this is. She said, you was born here just like we was. But I escaped. And the question became, how did I escape and other people haven't been able to? There's so many factors. So in writing this book, I learned a lot, especially some of the reasons why people can't advance. For example, Let's talk about the credit system. It's horrible. But here's the loophole in it. Yeah, more people spending less time in prison for committing federal crimes than the 7 year mark that stays negative on your credit report. Why? We have three credit bureaus, but only one determines whether or not you can get an auto or home loan. Why? Um, if a person living in poverty gets arrested, they'll spend the entire time in jail until their trial. Because if they have money, they get a bail. The question is why, and then why is the legal system giving them more time in prison than somebody else who have not committed crimes, and especially with the ratio of people of color versus white. Because in the book, I put a picture in there of one person in jail with a bunk bed up under him and nobody was in it, and I put, where's the other person? The other person are politicians. They need to be right there with them because they created the environment for that person to commit an act to go to jail. So they're directly responsible. And writing this book was more than an eye opener. It was terrible. It really was. It was terrible. And believe it or not, when I spoke to some friends about it, they say, "Oh, you got a death wish." Now, like, it got to be told. I said, it has to be told.
It
I
has
said,
to be told. I
I
think
said,
that yeah, absolutely. We have to tell the truth.
yes,
um, and you're speaking from experience. You're not sharing this from the perspective of someone who's standing on the sidelines of the game, but trying to tell everybody how to play the sport. You know, you've lived it. You've
yes,
lived it. You know what it's like to lack the things that you need, and you see that your community. And I see the same thing. My community has struggled. I mean, tremendously. It's a million times worse than when I left, and that is so heartbreaking to me. And so I understand exactly what you're saying, but if we're not even going to talk about it, we're not going to deal with it. And it needs to be dealt with because poverty is taking its toll on our country, on our nation, on from mental health on down. And so it's good to hear that you're talking about this and talking about the prison system and all the different things that are impacted. I have some little data here that really shocked me, and I try to stress this. I teach economic development here and urban transformation here in the New Orleans area, and the racial wealth gap is
hmm,
tremendous. So when you're talking about credit, for many of us, we ruin our credit early in life, and
yes,
we can't get anything. So that it's not always about how much money you have. I always say it's not just how much money you make or how much money you have. It's about the money you can save. And so many of us ruin our credit early in life, sets us on a path of never being able to get things like houses and cars the way we should be able to, never be able to live beyond the paycheck to paycheck mode. And credit is gold in this country. And so this is why it's so important that we learn these things early on. Sometimes poverty, we can't escape poverty because we don't understand the system and how these small things can have a big impact. It's not just people are so hungry to get the big paycheck, but if you have no credit, or you've got to go to a payday loan company to get money, these things are always going to keep you four steps behind. So just on the racial wealth gap, a white household wealth, $284,000. That's 2022 data. Black household wealth, $44,000. About 15 to 20 cents for every white dollar. The wealth gap in this country is horrific. Hispanics make more than us on average. Asians make more than us on average. Indians make more than us on average. Our wealth gap is so tremendously low. And that is a problem that we need to focus on and start talking more about. So I love that you're dealing with this issue of poverty. You're writing about it. You're sharing how to combat poverty. You're giving voice to an issue that is so important. Many people, 1 in 10, are living in poverty. More than that, probably than of us who have grown up. in impoverished or areas that will be considered poverty stricken. And we need to continue to have these conversations. So talk to me about, though, your writing and the writing of the book. I know we talked about what you learned about yourself, and I really admire the things that you said. But how long did it take you to write the book, and how did you research? What was your source of research material that you tapped into?
Um, it literally took me an entire year because I was working a daytime job, and I literally took my lunch break, my dinner break, and I would write to 2 a.m. I wrote so much that I developed carpal tunnel in my hands. And when I mean carpal tunnel, people can tell you about the pain associated with carpal tunnels, but when your fingers start striking keys without you telling it to do, that's how bad it was. I researched, I went through every statistics from the United States Census Bureau to there's one called what is it called? It's called KFF. I went through everybody that talked about poverty within that year, thousands of hours, cutting back information. Every time the news came on, they talked about something. I wrote it down real quick, and I went to the computer and I researched it and saw what I can add into the book. And so it was an ongoing process. When I finally finished writing, I was like, what do I do now? I was tired. I was worn out. But the topic was in my head so strong that I knew I just could not let it die. It needed to come out because this is a pandemic just as terrible as the coronavirus. The only difference is the government took action in the coronavirus. They're not doing a thing with this.
Mm, that's true.
Right? And it was horrible. It really was. It was a horrible experience to write a book about poverty because you grew up in it, you left, you thought you escaped, and then, like I said before, if you got family members still there, you ain't going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the programs set up that can help them, like college, except for one thing: most people living in poverty can't afford. And most people living in poverty have bad credit, so they're not going to get a student loan. Which means that they can't go to college. They try going to a trade school, but guess what? That's money you have to pay back. And this is one of the things I did some research on. We have over 83 social welfare programs in the United States, but all of these programs cannot be combined. Why? If I set you on a course to come out of poverty, let's say 4 years, and I provide a program that can help you pay for education without a dime pound out your pocket. Make sure your finance for your household is there. Make sure you have transportation, and if you need daycare. And then in a 4-year window, you have a bachelor's degree and you can walk away. What's wrong with that?
Mm-hmm.
Most people, when you tell them that, when you ask people to talk about social welfare, they say TAF and SNAP. They don't know about the rest of them.
Yeah.
Why? Why is there a barrier when all our government needs to do is come up with a plan? And I put this in writing. Social workers should be equipped and trained to look at all these programs once the government revamps them. Look at all these programs and say, I know what's going to work for you. And so we're going to put you on a 4-year course, but we're going to make sure that your needs are taken care of, which includes raising the costs of social welfare to match the economy. Because like right now, a bottle of bleach costs $8. Well, that was during the pandemic. Why is it still $8?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to put them in a position where they can succeed, where they won't have to make a decision like my child need a new pair of shoes. I'm not talking about no Jordans or anything. I'm talking about my child need a new pair of shoes, but I need gas for my vehicle. That should never be a choice, but it is. For people living in poverty, it is. And we have to, and I hate to use this term, but force our government to do their job, because nothing's going to change until those politicians realize that we can put them out of office. We don't have to wait for no impeachment and none of that stuff. We voted you in, or we let somebody vote you in, but we can come together and vote you out. We gain control over what people died for that you take for granted, the right to vote.
Well, I'll tell you, I've been posting a lot on social media about the midterm elections in November. Um, all There are so many seats in the House and Senate that are up for grabs.
Hmm.
This is a critical period in this administration. We must go out and vote for in the midterms. We must. It is so important. There are countless Senate seats and all the House seats, and or if not all, the vast majority of them. And we need to go out and we need to vote. So for those who are out there, if you're questioning how do we make a change, how do we shift things in this country, first you need to go vote, not just in the midterms and not just in the presidential elections, but every election, every local
Absolutely.
election, every election you need to go and vote. That's the power that we have. And so I 100% agree with you. We need to remember that the government is, they work for us. We're the people. And
Exactly.
but we cannot do that when we are sitting down and sitting back and I'm not going to vote. What's the point? What's the big? We need to exercise this power, a power that we have solely because people before us fought and protested and died. We need to use our power to vote. We also need, as you said, to become more financially literate because that is a challenge that we have. When I grew up, people would get into $2,000 worth of debt and then file bankruptcy because someone told them, "Oh, bankruptcy is going to fall off your credit, so you'll be fine."
Mm.
I watched more people ruin their credit early doing things like that versus just humbling themselves, getting themselves together and paying that debt off. We would use programs or use bankruptcy and think it's going to impact us the same way it does for other people. We need to know what resources are out there for us, what can help us, what makes sense. Like you said, SNAP is one option to help you, but it doesn't fix the poverty, challenge that we have. So I 100% agree with that. But this has been great. I'm so excited to meet you. I want to put that book up again, let everyone know what you're doing, The Invisible America. Go out, everyone, buy this book, buy it, read
Please
it,
buy it.
review it, and tell someone about it. Don't pass it to your
Absolutely.
friend. Tell somebody about it so they can buy their own copy. We are all independent authors. We have to work really, really hard to market our work. And so it's important that you help us and help us by, once again, buy the book, read the book, review the book, and tell someone about it. So tell us how we can get a copy of it and give me some of the feedback that you've received from some of your readers.
Okay, the book is on Amazon.com, and for those who want to know why I use the name Anav, okay, the book is on Amazon.com, and you can easily type in The Invisible Miracle by Anav. The reason why I chose the name Anav is because I woke up in the middle of the night and the Lord said, use Anav. So I like to do research, and I researched it. Anav is Hebrew for the word I am the poor.
Mhm.
So it's synonymous with the topic of poverty. So I said, okay, I'm gonna take my name off of this. I'm putting a knob on here because it makes sense. This is about poverty, and it's not me they need to focus on. If they want to focus on me, focus on the name of Nav because it means I am the poor. Feedback. Um, Feedback from people that have given copies of the book was always, positive. But I'm still looking for that feedback from people who unfortunately don't know the book is out there.
Mhm.
That's what I need more than anything. I need the book pushed. Um, I need to do a better job of marketing because I can't use the excuse that finances stop marketing. No, it doesn't. You just got to find ways around it.
Mhm.
And the feedback is that people say this is a must-read book. It's about time. But then, like I said in the very beginning, I've also heard people say, "Are you trying to end your life?" And so here's the answer to that question. Am I trying to end my life? A life of poverty? Yes.
Mhm.
Am I trying to end somebody else's life of poverty? Yes. If this is the only purpose God put me on this planet for, and I did it, and it cost me my life. Then so be it. This country needs to address poverty because one day there's going to be a civil war, and it's not going to be whites versus blacks. It's going to be rich versus poor, and everybody that's in power are going to look back and remember this day that you did nothing to change the course of people living in poverty.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
Michelle.
you writing this book. Once again, we encourage everyone to go out there, get a copy of it, read it, review it, and share it with someone else. And just keep repeating, keep reading all these books by independent authors. You can find them on direct2author.com, which is my platform, but you can find Anav's book on Amazon. And we're going to continue to support you. So we hope you'll come here for the Black Ink Book Festival in New Orleans. And we just hope to continue to see you progress. What you're doing and the research that you've done behind it warrants you a slot somewhere on the news. And I know you can, we can talk about the PR and getting your name out there. It's just this is a very important topic. It's important to me, and I know it's important to many people who live the life, who've fought hard to put it behind us, but also, as you said, who has to go back and see family and know and feel that survivor's remorse in a way. It's like
Yes.
I survived this, but I have too many people I love who did not, and now I just don't feel good about the fact that I have more. And
Yeah.
that's something people don't quite understand. It's a really, really hard place to be in. I really I have a big heart for a lot of these young athletes who come out of these, impoverished areas and now are millionaires, and what that must feel like to look back and know they've come so far. It's hard to sometimes even appreciate what you've done because you still have so many people in your tribe, in your family who's struggling. And so we
Right.
want to end that in this country. So thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate this call and this conversation. And we just hope that everyone will go out and get your book on Amazon. Again, we're going to show that book for everyone. Go out, The Invisible America. Beautiful cover, very interesting, lot to learn. Read it, digest it, and share it with someone else. So thank you for being with us. Hold for me. We're going to end the podcast, but I would love to give you a formal farewell. So take care. Any final words? Let me do that first. Any
Yes.
final?
Please
Mhm.
vote. Send a message to the politicians that you are not playing. Make them talk about these issues. Stop letting them tell you what they're going to do when they get in the office, and instead force them to address your issues of poverty.
Absolutely. Take care of everybody. Really appreciate
Take
that.
care. Thank you.